My name is Chat Chapman. I was stationed here in the United States Coast Guard 1964 and then back again in 1966. Probably 4 of the best years of my life, and we had to take care of this iron horse behind me, supplied by RCA in 1945, one of 2 known existing set of transmitters today in the United States, one here and one in California. A typical day for us was to get up 11 men and take care of this transmitter station, and we were also an electronic repair station for boats that the Coast Guard had on Long Island. The best part of the day was we take care of each other like brothers. We also maintained a telephone system on Fire Island because this is called the radio Annex. We are men here taking care of the transmitter, and the actual radio men are stationed 35 miles east in Center Moriches. We sent out Morse code from that location, and I'm positive that the transmitter I'm standing in front of, it's 20,000 kilowatts, and we talk to people anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Aircraft or ships needed help, we were probably the place that got their message, and it was a continuous wave, went from here to Mexico that I'm aware of, probably further. Typical day, we get up, take care of this transmitter, there's another one behind us, and we'd have 4 frequencies that we could answer to immediately, and if the radio man from Center Moriches requested a change, that was a little 10 component swap to go to the new frequency they requested. We had 5 electronic technicians, 3 telephone technicians, and what they call a seaman or a seaman apprentice were right out of boot camp, would come here and take care of all the little odds and ends, and we would all take turns going from the highest to the lowest chore on the station. This transmitter was put in station in 1945, and the maintenance, the way the Coast Guard and probably all services, is called preventative maintenance program. Every 6 months, no matter how many hours of use the transmitter had, we were designed to take out certain components that do wear out, and whether it was used 1 hour or 1,000 hours, preventative maintenance says change it now. And later on we'll show you what I think is the most important part of the transmitter, the power amplifier. It's a tube about a little bigger than a football, and it generates a lot of heat, and because of that, the manufacturer puts copper heat sinks all around the base of the power amplifier tubes. Before I got here, there was 4 tubes in each head. We'd take them out in 6 months, whether we used it an hour or 1,000 hours, and throw them in the dumpster. When I got here, I said, hold on boys, took the 4 PA tubes to the local junkyard in town. The weight of the copper equals 1/2 keg of Budweiser beer. I don't think they ever threw a power amplifier tube away again. The HF frequency transmitter is the one I'm standing in front of, which was used the most, and it was always our job to keep it up, and on average it was used hours and hours a day, and we would keep it up, and like I mentioned before, hardly ever down. Maintenance on this thing was a minimum of repairs. It was all preventative before it got out of hand and went down completely. Back in the 60s, these things do generate heat, and we don't have central air conditioning like they do today in every other station. We had mobile stands of fans to keep the temperature down in the transmitter room. And because it's a summer resort area, people come here, we would say, if you need a hand and you missed the ferry, we would take you, because we had 2 vehicles, back to the mainland, or to the bridge to call your parents. We are here on Fire Island, and looking east to Smith's Point, there are 18 villages and 35 miles of beach. The only communications that was guaranteed is the hardline telephone wires that run the stretch of that beach to talk to the radio men in Center Moriches, and because it's a salt air environment, the cable was encased in a jacket, and it was pressurized with dry nitrogen. The cable can't run 35 miles, so every whatever there's a splice about the size of a football again, and the local teenagers had pellet guns. They got a kick out of shooting their pellet gun at the splice and hear the gas escaping under pressure. The telephone technicians at this station would drive the entire length of the beach almost every single day, and there were test points all along the way. If there was a leak and if there was low pressure, they'd fix the leak and recharge the jacket. And that was a daily routine for them, 90% of the year. Here at the radio station, you're known as an electronic technician to be transferred every 2 or 3 years, and maybe, if you're lucky, go to a nice place. If you're not, you go to isolated duty in a very isolated place. My set of orders sent me to Hawaii. I was in the center of the Pacific Ocean, just a little bit west of Midway Island, and that was a Coast Guard Loran station, Long Range Aids to Navigation, which is a predecessor to current day GPS. And this is 1965. I'm on this little island, and we were guaranteed to put out a signal in a network with 3 other Loran stations, and you triangulate and know where you were back in the 60s within 10 yards, which I thought was absolutely astounding. Now they know where you are on what tile in the bathroom with GPS. And I came back, they sent a fella out to take my place. I come home, and they asked me, where would you like to be reassigned? And I said, Fire Island, because I'm familiar with the equipment and the area, because I grew up here on Long Island. I said, I'd probably re-enlist. They sent me back to Fire Island, and when my 4 years were up, an officer came from Manhattan to sign some papers, and we had just gotten married, and I said, plan changes. There's a change in our plans. I'm not going to stay in for 20 years. Did my last turn right here 50 years ago, 1966. Trying to tune the transmitter head to the new frequency that we're trying to install to get the standing wave ratio down and the most power out of the stick. You would take this lever right here and in Morse code go dit, 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 da. While you're doing the da, you stress it, so you go, not to exaggerate it, but it's dit, 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 da. And I'm turning and watching these meters. The higher I get it, closer to 100%, the more power is getting out on the antenna, and they lived happily ever after. This took about 5 minutes. That's the story I was telling you before, where the TVs got affected by a harmonic.
Okay. Cool. And go.
Okay. Main door, open it up, and it's like a safe, built to last. And it has, on these doors, anything else you open, it's going to shut the power off. And the same on the back side of the transmitter. We've already checked with John Stewart to find out if there's any components in our old stock room. He's been here for 21 years and said everything is gone by the time he got here. Also, no tech manuals were found in his time here. This part of the transmitter is called the power amplifier section, and these tubes, there's 2 here, 2 more down on the other head, generate heat. To dissipate that heat, the manufacturer puts a jacket of copper heat sinks, they're called, to reduce the amount of heat here. This is what we used to take out in a 6-month preventative maintenance routine. Those tubes and maybe 4 or 5, 6 other parts. And when these things went to town, we came back with cash instead of throwing them away like they used to. Frequency listed, probably the last time this transmitter was turned on, is 17,002 kilocycles. Okay, we're still at high frequency 2 transmitter. The second frequency used on this side was 8734 kilocycles. Identical power setup all the way down the wall. Hours used, 50,055 on this head. I was interviewed prior to coming here today, and one of the questions I was asked then was what was one of the highlights. It's this exact transmitter that I'm standing in front of today. The Coast Guard radio man in Santa Mauritius asked for a frequency change because there was a ship calling and said we want to use this channel because there's other ships involved. And to do that, you open the door, the power is off, pick up a little box, has 12 components in it, and you change them strong arm. Crescent wrenches and pipe wrenches, screwdrivers, the components. As an example, there's a resistor in here, it's about as big as my forearm. You change resistors, capacitors, and whatever to go from one frequency to another. Now you have a new frequency, and you have to tune the head to the tower, the antenna, and stop standing wave ratio to get the most power out of the antenna. There's a little lever over here you'll see later on, and we all know you tune a transmitter to the Morse code letter V, dit, 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 da. So as I take the lever and go dit, 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 da, adjust some of the controls to get the most power out of it. Every television set on the South Shore within about 30 miles, television blinked, dit, 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 da. Don't you know, the next morning, an FCC person drives out to this Coast Guard station from Manhattan with what they call a pink slip. Normally, if you do something like that, you get a fine, and I'm going to make up a number, a couple of $1,000. When he found out it came from the Coast Guard radio station, right in front of our chief, he ripped that fine slip in pieces and said, "We'll let you go this time." And the reason we had this harmonics frequency created was one of the components was bad, and it created a double or triple or quadruple frequency of what they were asking for, and that's how the televisions all started to blink. Naturally, we retuned it with new parts. We changed the bad part, so the next time that happened, everything was what the frequency was supposed to be and nothing else. When I was talking before about tuning and getting rid of standing wave ratio, it all depends on the height or style of antenna that you're trying to match the frequency to. And we behind us had the northeast corner of this building had a 300-foot tall steel antenna with guy wires coming down in all different directions. And the antenna today is missing, but you can walk around the property right now and find all the cement guy wire holders. And one of them was painted U.S. Coast Guard logos in the front driveway. Okay, on the west side of the station was what we called our antenna field, and there probably was somewhere around 10 antennas. One of them for sure was a rhombic. It's not there. None of the antennas are there to my knowledge today, but we have a couple of fellows. One fellow was our antenna expert. He'd go out there and take care of maintenance due to weather, salt air, and whatever. And those never were a part of any failure. Antenna systems were maintained well.